Thanks so much to all my patrons. Join now to help support the channel and help pick the books I review on this channel. Link in the description. And I am done. Okay, so I just got done finished reading The Daughter's War. This is the prequel to The Blacktongue Thief and the Blacktongue series by Christopher Buehlman. And I want to give you my unedited thoughts upon finishing this book, which was literally just right now. So yeah, this was a really, really good book. Hesitate to say that it was like incredible or that I loved it, but it's somewhere between liked and loved. So it's a 4.5 for me, which I feel like is going to be a pretty average score for this thing. I bet most people are going to give this about a 4. But I, with a bit of a controversial opinion here, I actually liked this one more than I liked The Blacktongue Thief. And I really like The Blacktongue Thief. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. But the problems I had with Blacktongue Thief didn't exist in this one. And this one had a little bit of a problem that didn't exist in the other one, but not quite as big of a problem. So back up a little bit, talk a little bit about this series as a whole. The Blacktongue Thief, I believe, came out last year, and maybe the year before, but I think it came out last year. And it was one of those kind of darling fantasy books that came out. Not like from one of those major authors, but it's one of those ones that came out where it's like everybody's talking about it, and you feel like this author has the potential to kind of pop in a year or two as the kind of series progresses. A bit in the way that kind of J. Kristoff kind of popped onto the scene, even though he was pretty popular when he came out with the Empire of the Vampire book. When the next one came out, it was like huge because everyone kind of knows about this guy now, and he had that kind of vibe to him. That's kind of what I feel about Christopher Buehlman. And so it was a bit odd then to have a book that I feel like was pretty critically acclaimed by most people that read this thing, a vast majority, to then say, I'm not going to continue the series, I'm actually going to tell a prequel story. And I don't know off the top of my head that I've ever heard of an author doing that. Tons of prequel stories have been written, but usually they're written later down the line. Thinking about something like Wheel of Time, where the prequel story was written, many books, I feel like 6-7 books down the line, before that one kind of came through. So to kind of reverse it a bit, take out the main character of the previous book and focus on one of the side characters was a bold choice, and one that I thought worked. But further than that, in terms of the bold choices, is the fact that the entire tone of this book changed. The first book was, I'd describe it as more of a lighthearted, fun adventure story with this swashbuckling kind of hero that isn't morally great, but is entertaining and funny, and we're going to have a good time. Whereas this one is a dire war story, a depressing war story with horrible things happening, and in a very sad, inevitable conclusion to the story that you kind of know is going to happen. I guess that's kind of why I said inevitable, right? But so totally different tone. And so I'm guessing that a vast majority of people are not going to prefer this one as much as they like The Blacktongue Thief for a couple reasons. One is that I feel like the fun, lighthearted, enjoyable story appeals to more people than the grim, dark kind of tone that this one had. But also, it's the fact that there's going to be a shattering of expectations from people that go into this one, because it's so vividly different. It almost feels like it's written by two different authors. And I find that to be a really good thing because, in the first story, it was a little bit too lighthearted. I felt like it could have gotten a bit more serious. But more critically, I felt like the book had a really, really enjoyable first half, but I felt like the second half really meandered, and it lost itself. And I had a major critical problem with the second half of that book, where I found the first half to be, incredible. This one, it nails the pacing issue right out of the gate. I mean, it nails it. It doesn't spend too much time at each kind of location. It keeps things going. It keeps the end game in mind. It keeps the main characters and the ones that you're kind of going to want a conclusion to. It keeps their stories going. That part was no longer a problem. But the one thing that stayed consistent between these is the writing style itself, not the tone of the book, but the writing style. Christopher Buehlman is a genius level writer. I mean, he's you just read like a chapter, read like a selection of this book to get a feel for it. Because at least for me, I mean, it just comes off the page so clean. It's punchy when it needs to be. It's witty, but not overly done. It's very beautiful, beautiful writing. And for an author that I think his first book that he'd ever written was The Blacktongue Thief, this being the second one, that is incredible. Because I honestly, as I'm reading, it feels like the writing is coming off like an Abercrombie. It feels like it's coming off like a Scott Lynch with the Gentleman Bastards, with like the Legend of Locke Lamora, where it's not afraid to use foul language, but it's in a way that keeps things kind of more funny and interesting rather than trying to be, edgy. It works. And there's so much about the writing style that's just incredible. Even though I've yet to give a 5-star book to Christopher Buehlman, he feels like one of the best writers that I'm currently reading works from, and an author that I will automatically pick up all his books. I feel like most people that I've read a book where I gave a 3.5 stars and 4-star and then gave a 4.5 star, I'd say, yeah, it's a good author. I don't know if they're going to be an auto buy for me, but Christopher Buehlman's definitely an auto buy, because I feel like, and maybe it's not going to appeal to the masses as much as it will to me, but I feel like it's inevitable that he will end up writing a book that I feel like goes down as one of my favorite books that I've ever read. If he can just nail the story and the right beats, exactly the right beats that I'm kind of looking for, which I feel like is the easier thing than being able to write really, really well. I feel like that's going to happen, and I'm looking forward to it. So, I read this in physical format, which was disappointing. I was sent this by the publisher, and I started reading it, I think, before the book came out, so I had no ability to actually get the book. But let's talk a little bit about the plot here, because it's kind of a totally different plot than the first book. Because a lot of the world was kind of, this background stuff going on in the original book, where this one kind of tells a lot of the backstory of it, where this book is called The Daughter's War, because there's been at least one, I think multiple wars against the goblins in the past, where most of the males, or a large amount of the male population has been killed, because these goblin wars are horrific. The goblins in these stories are not the small little weakling goblins that we kind of get as fodder in a lot of our stories. These are terrifying. They truly are the most terrifying goblins that have been written in any fantasy that I've ever read. I mean, they're written with very vivid detail, and it's truly terrifying whenever they show up on the page. But another war is going down, and it follows this woman who is part of a more noble family, but her and her brothers all got split up into different parts of the military, and she is leading this trial group that has these enormous ravens that are human-sized, where each woman in this group has 2 of these ravens, and these ravens have been taught and bred to attack goblins, and they're going to see if they can be a pivotal piece to turning the tide of this war. So it's a really war memoir type book, but then it also jumps around and tells a little bit of the stories of these brothers as well, and we get these very solid plot lines with a beginning, middle, and end to each of these siblings and this sister. And so it's a really wonderful story being able to play through this whole little family and their fate. Even though you know that this woman is going to be fine because she is in the next book, which happens later on down the line. So very interesting book that deals with this war. Doesn't feel very repetitive. When it feels like it's going to get repetitive, it skips around and jumps time, so it doesn't feel stale. And it really just keeps things going, and extremely well done. The world building here was wonderful, just truly wonderful stuff. Top tier, makes you feel there. It makes you feel like you're right there. I mean, some of the things here, like these enormous goblin warships that are multiple times bigger than anything that humans can build, really captured the imagination. and these ravens and the way these goblins attack and these different kind of magical elements that are going along here. And one of the brothers that's getting involved with a mage and what they can do with spells, and the magic, it works really well. So yeah, everything here is really great. I mean, I feel like the only reason I didn't end up giving this a 5 was at no point did the story itself keep me crazy riveted. I mean, like the writing was great, the world was great, love the characters here. But once again, I feel like the story was the weakest part of the book, where it felt like that was the exact same case in the Blacktongue Thief as well. But these are easily fixable things, I feel like, for an author that has this capability. I can't wait to see what he has coming in store for him in the future, whether it be more books in the Blacktongue series or something entirely different. I'm going to be there for it, reviewing it, and looking forward to reading it. So that is it for me. Thank you so much for watching this review, and as always, happy reading to you. Thanks again to all my patrons, with a special shout out to my Ascendant tier and Librarian tier patrons: Amy, Anna G, CJ, Doust, Darren, JD, Jonathan, Nathan T, Nev's Book Channel, 𝗟𝗏𝗏, Ron Reich, Russell, Ryan L, Slay, Sydney Baker, Tahir, Zion, Anna, Andra, Blair, Brock, Evan, Harry W, Joe UK, Kat Mick, Michael Sugarman, Sky, and Tyler. Thanks for sticking to the end of this video, and if you want to watch some more content from my channel, click over here and I've got some good videos for you. Thanks so much.